60% of Americans said that would be a problem for the nation's economy if the debt ceiling is not raised, but they're mixed on whether or not it's a good thing to actually raise the ceiling, and they divide on whether that should be done on its own or in connection with cuts to federal spending.
All right, so let's put that all in perspective with our guest. Representative Glenn G.T. Thompson represents the 5th Congressional District in Pennsylvania and joins us on POTUS. Thank you for being on the program today.
Well, good morning, Tim. My pleasure. Thanks for allowing me to join you and your listeners.
It's a great pleasure. I think it's first time on, so welcome to the program. You're a freshman this year. Did you anticipate that you were going to get into this kind of debacle your first year?
Well, actually, I'm starting my third term.
Oh, third term, okay.
But
I'm sorry, third term, you're right.
That doesn't matter. I tell folks after 24 hours in Washington, you can't claim that newbie title anymore.
Well, this is even better, though, because now you can compare the last time around this fight on the debt ceiling with this one. And what's different about this one?
Well, I think what's obviously is the time schedule is different on this. The Treasury has determined a date coming up next week, which has compressed things together. We've got a battle to make sure that we fund the government, and the government shouldn't be shut down. I want to be clear on that. That should not have been an option. I have voted I don't know how many times to fund the government. We've done that out of the House and sent it to the Senate where it's died. It's just been tabled. It hasn't really gotten a real up or down vote in terms of funding the government, and that's a big difference right now. It's the unwillingness of Senator Reid and President Barack Obama to come to the table in regular order.
The Senate has also passed a measure to the House. Why not do an up or down vote on their measure?
Well, I think we're past the point of a clean CR as well. That hasn't been brought to the House. I don't think there's the votes to pass it. Quite frankly, I think. I even disagree with the premise of what is a clean continuing resolution. It's a word used to act like we're tackling challenges when we really aren't.
I understand. My only question was that given what you were saying is that the Senate refused to take up the House version for even a vote. The Senate has produced one, and the House is refusing to take it up for a vote. You see why people get frustrated when they hear that kind of logic.
No, I completely understand why folks are frustrated. I mean, and the fact that now we're, the Treasury Secretary has identified a date next week. This is compressed two things that are constitutionally we should be taking care of. That is obviously the funding of the government, and also our ethical, legal, and moral responsibility to pay our debt, to pay back those folks who, in good faith, we have borrowed from. But this is all. I think it's all obviously complicated by the fact of the majority of my constituents, the majority of citizens in the country who want us to put some real reforms in place to, number one, to address a law that they are dissatisfied with that is causing them economic harm, causing them harm in terms of access to health care, and at the same time want to put us on a course to where we work ourselves towards where we don't have this looming debt that is held over the heads of our, not just today's generation, but all future generations that cause not just a risk to our economic harm, but quite frankly to our national security.
Here's where there's more confusion. Again, we're speaking with Representative Glenn Thompson, G.T. Thompson from the 5th District in Pennsylvania. He tweets at Congressman G.T. This was about the Affordable Care Act, that is the overturning of or repeal of the entire Obamacare. It became one that took apart pieces of Obamacare. Then it's talking about federal deficits and budgets and spending. And in the last couple of days, I haven't heard much about Obamacare. You just raised it again. So what is the issue for Republicans right now about the debt ceiling? It was, and of course the government shutdown. It was about Obamacare. Now it seems to be about deficits and spending. So what is it that Republicans want exactly?
Well, I think it did. This is a battle that has transformed, in my opinion, Tim. It did start out, obviously, with an obligation to make sure that our government was running. And the shutdown we're in today is estimated to be about a 13% shutdown. That's about how much of government has been impacted. Now, any type of shutdown is not an effective strategy. Is not the way to go. I worked in healthcare for almost 30 years, and so I knew, as opposed I was when I first read that bill, and I knew the harm that it was going to create in terms of how it was going to raise premiums and how it was going to decrease access and how it was going to drive quality and innovation out of our healthcare system. I also knew that within a CR you weren't going to defund this bill because, unfortunately, 88% of the Affordable Care Act is mandatory spending. It's not discretionary spending that you deal with when it comes to the continuing resolution or even annual appropriations. But there are fixes, bipartisan fixes, that we could agree to if we were in regular order. If the Senate Majority Reid was willing to come to the table, I still put out there one of the pieces of low-hanging fruit would be so easy to do would be the medical device tax. This is a tax that's actually costing us significant jobs in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Well,
and there is bipartisan support for that. Again, the problems right now and when it comes to just the shutdown, and if that one particular aspect of the Affordable Care Act is that is seen as a boon to some businesses, and there's maybe some employment, but it is seen once again by a lot of people as putting the interests of lobbyists and industry and business ahead of that of the average American. So there may be some political fallout for both Democrats and Republicans, even though both support, releasing that tax.
But Tim, I disagree because it's not the business and industry that has the cardiac problems and winds up, with a pacemaker that's where the cost of that is driven up or is driven offshore to be manufactured somewhere else, or the diabetes testing equipment, or the wheelchairs, or the walkers, or the prosthetic limbs. I mean, these, any tax you have.
But the support for repealing of that tax, though, is coming from people who represent districts where they're manufactured.
Well, I also would disagree with that. When you look at the standalone budget resolution vote that occurred in the Senate, sponsored by one of my senators, Bobby Casey, that passed 79-20, clearly bipartisan. In Pennsylvania, Mr. Casey, obviously, who was the author of that resolution, a Democrat, and Mr. Toomey, a Republican, both voted for it. I mean, coming out of the Senate today, you have to say that's a remarkable bipartisan vote, 79-20, to repeal the medical device tax.
No, I understand that, but again, there's the manufacturers in Pennsylvania for those kinds of devices. Pittsburgh, for example, that area. There's that
doesn't surprise you. Mr. or Mr. Toomey were at the lead of that. There are other states, obviously, where medical devices and medical innovation Medical innovation is incredibly important for all Americans.
On the debt ceiling, is that something that are you one of those who believes that going over without having a solution or raising the debt ceiling would not put the U.S. in financial peril, or do you believe that it would?
There are obviously processes in place and sufficient monies coming in that our interest payments would be made when you look at the revenue that comes in on a daily basis. But we would not be meeting all of our, I believe, what I consider our debt obligations. I mean, all the companies who in good faith do, and small businesses, most of them doing business with the federal government, who would expect payment. All those physicians who are providing Medicare, Medicaid services, those hospitals, both rural and urban, that are treating patients under some understanding that the federal government would pay the bills in terms of Medicaid and Medicare. We're not going to be able to meet all those obligations. I don't think that's right legally. I don't think it's ethical, and I don't think morally. I think we have an obligation, obviously, to pay that. So I do not want to see us get to a situation that we are not going to meet our financial obligations.
Would you vote for a short-term increase of the debt ceiling just to get over this hump right now?
I don't think I would at this point, only because I would want very specific guidelines, so it wouldn't be a clean CR. It would be
I'm just talking about the raising of the debt ceiling, not even the continuing
the debt ceiling to get us more time. Yeah, I think so we have adequate time. I'm disappointed that we went past the time just for the October 1st for the continuing resolution. I think we have an obligation to function this government. So so when it comes to the debt ceiling, I'm hoping and praying that we cooler heads will prevail. We get to the table. We work out these differences. I don't think there's huge differences in the end. It's just there's been a complete lack of willingness from the leadership in the Senate and the White House to really come to the table. Now, I can't say the same for my Democratic colleagues in the House. We've had the limited appropriation bills that they're targeted that we've done. And as of the end of business today, we will have funded over 50% of the government with these bills that we've been doing just in about a week and a half. 50%, over 50%. 57 of my Democratic colleagues, folks I work with every day on different issues, have voted with us.
We will see how it progresses. We appreciate your spending time with us this morning, Congressman. Thanks so much.
All right, Tim. Thank you.
Representative Glenn G.T. Thompson represents the 5th District in Pennsylvania, Republican, who tweets at Congressman G.T.